Welcome to the DFO Rundown podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Gregor on dailyfaceoff.com. Delivered by DoorDash.
Welcome to episode 125, the playoff preview edition of the DFO Rundown. I'm Jason Gregor alongside Frank Saravalli. And I'm not going to lie, Frank, I am amped up for the playoffs. I can't wait for the first puck drop tonight. Boston and Carolina, the first game, get going at, well, let's be honest, who knows what time it is? 7:08, 7:10, 7:12. There's no clue what time the game starts, but we know it's after 7 Eastern time. How you doing?
I am good. Yeah, take this schedule and shoot it right into my veins every other day, every series. So you don't have any wacky 2 off days. Everyone's dealing with the same thing no matter what. I love it. I'm so excited to get this rolling. It feels like we've been building to this for months now. And, you know, especially after a relatively drama-free Eastern Conference, it's going to be bananas to watch the Atlantic Division slugfest and then see what's going on in the West if there's any upsets.
203 days since opening day of the regular season. It's obviously been a little bit longer due to COVID delays and then, of course, the Olympic break and everything else, but we're finally here. And I'm pumped about it. There's lots of storylines I want to get to, Frank. So let's dive right in, and let's start in the Atlantic Division, where you have the President's Trophy, the number 1 seed, the Florida Panthers, taking on the Washington Capitals, and also potentially the return of Aaron Ekblad in game 1.
Yeah, it's Ekblad got a little Norris Trophy love for me. I put him in on the last and 5th spot on my ballot because I just felt like his season and how good it was needed to be recognized. 57 points in 61 games, a guy that really has become a complete defenseman, and there's been a lot of up and downs in his career, ups and downs. Specifically with regard to injury. And now this is just sort of one more spot that he needs to overcome. The Panthers have some question marks potentially in net with their goaltending. I've seen tons of social media criticism about Sergei Bobrovsky and playoff Bob. I think maybe that's the only focal point for the Panthers, aside from Ekblad coming back, because otherwise this team is just an absolute juggernaut offensively.
Oh, yeah, that to me is what separates him. I actually had Mackenzie Weegar on my Norris ballot late, the teammate of Aaron Ekblad. So there's 2 guys who obviously you get them both in the lineup, and you know, even if Ekblad's going to need a few games to get up to speed, I like the offensive depth of the Florida Panthers. It's the best in the NHL. I understand the concerns about goaltending, but the problem is, does Washington have goaltending that makes you say, wow, we think our goalies are going to out-duel Florida? That's why Washington, to me, this is a bad matchup for the Washington Capitals. I think they're a little bit older of a team against just the deepest group. If it's not Florida, then it's probably St. Louis, 1-9 as far as forwards go. And Huberdeau's been on fire, but Barkov in this series, Frank, I think he's going to be a massive difference maker for the Florida Panthers.
He always is. I mean, that guy shows up to play every time. It may not, the biggest impact may not be on the score sheet necessarily, but his complete game is what's really going to help the Panthers when it comes to playoff time. My concern for the Caps is really, they've been all over the place. You mentioned their age, and in some ways that experience can be valuable, having won a Stanley Cup previously. They're not going to be a team that I think is going to be easily rattled, but I really thought that they were hitting their stride in like mid-April. They seemed to be a team that was kind of putting it all together at the exact right time. And then their last 10 days or 2 weeks of the season were so disappointing. They looked lifeless at times. I just don't see this team having the ability to flip the switch and get back to the group that they were for stretches this season. I don't know if there's been a more confounding team in the NHL this season in terms of, the different shades of it that we've seen. You might be able to argue the Oilers, but I think the Caps have been way more Jekyll and Hyde than that. And going up against a team like the Panthers, there's just no room for error. There's no margin for error. So I've got the Panthers in 6, but I could see it being a shorter series than that.
Yeah, I have the Panthers in 5. I look, they got 9 15-goal scorers. They got 10 40-point players on that team. They're the number 1 offense. And if we go by goals against, I understand the concern about that, but Florida and Washington were exactly tied in goals against per game in the regular season at 2.95. The difference was the Florida Panthers scored almost a full goal a game more. But I will say this, Frank, it's going to be a high-scoring series. All these games this year, the three head-to-head matchups, they were all 5-4, 5-4, 4-3 games. And I think you're going to see whatever the over is in a lot of the games, Frank. The line, I'd be taking the over. But I'll take the Panthers in 5 and the over in probably 80% of the games.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Is there any avenue for an upset for the Caps?
I don't see it. Florida... They've got a long playoff drought, Frank. I don't see any way they extend their playoff drought this year. I'm not saying now, granted, I admit it. I picked Florida at the start of the season to win the cup. So I'm riding the Panther, and I will continue that. I think the Panthers are going to go on a deep run. Obviously, once you get later in the series, you get against the better teams, it's harder. But I think Washington's a really good matchup for Florida in the first round to maybe get rid of some of those postseason jitters, because Barkov and Huberdeau and Ekblad, they've never won a playoff series.
I'm with you. I spent the entire weekend saying to myself, okay, no one saw the Columbus Blue Jackets coming in 2019.
Hedman was hurt,
one, and it was a sweep. So what is there a series this year in which one of the first round series in which one of the massive favorites, may just not see it coming?
I think so. And we'll get to that later. Okay. I do think there is one for me. Is there for you?
Not in the first round.
Okay.
But I think in the second.
I have a top seed in a division losing. So we'll get to that.
All right. Well, let's go to the Leafs and Lightning.
Now, this is a series, Frank, that obviously you've got the two-time defending champs. And it's hard to pick against the two-time defending champs when the opposition is a team that in the last, and I'm a big believer, Frank, I look at season numbers, but then I really dig in on the last few months of the season because I think that's more what a team does in October. I don't think has as much impact as what a team does in March and April. And the Toronto Maple Leafs, they can score with anyone. You want to get run and gun, they will match you, no problem. The challenge is Jack Campbell in the last 3 months has a save percentage under 900. The Maple Leafs are 23rd in the NHL in goals against since February 1st. And now you're going up against a Tampa team where even if you think, okay, we'll tighten it up. Yeah, but is Campbell going to match Vasilevsky in goal, right? I think this is the worst possible first round matchup for the Leafs. Honestly believe that. They would have much rather have Boston even. I know Boston's beat them the last few years, but I just think this is a terrible matchup for Toronto. Victor Hedman, McDonough, Cernak, that huge hulking blue line in Tampa Bay. I don't see how Toronto is going to outscore their porous defense in this series.
I don't know that we could see this any differently. Obviously, it's hard to pick against the two-time defending champs for a lot of reasons. You hit on some of them. I think this is actually the best matchup that the Leafs could have asked for.
Okay. How come?
Purely mentally. If they play against the Boston Bruins in round 1, they're the favorite. They're supposed to win the series. They're carrying all the weight that they've had of these last 5 years. And it's overwhelming, I think. Not to mention the collapses that they've had against the Bruins. The Lightning, no one's really, not to say that they're not expecting them to win. They're not being picked often to win.
Yeah.
And they're sort of at this point playing with house money in the sense that if you lose, there's no shame in it really for the Leafs. And I don't think there's going to be some massive overhaul where they start firing people from their front office into the sun. I just don't see it. On paper, the Leafs have been just as good as the Lightning this season. And I feel like the big question mark you mentioned in net, you kind of cherry picked some of the numbers, I feel like, on Jack Campbell. Because he missed a month, and since he came back to close out the season, he went 7-0-2 with a 9.15. I mean, if you look at the Leafs record this season, when they get 900 goaltending or better, it's through the roof. Their big wall that they hit was because Jack Campbell played a significant stretch and Peter Mrazek did at like 875, 880. You can't win. You can't even come close to that. So their record with 900 or better has been unreal. They're not asking Jack Campbell to be 915, although he showed that for the last month of the season. I think if they just get average goaltending from Jack Campbell, that they're going to be very competitive. And I have the Leafs winning in 6.
All right. I love it. Well, if we all agree to be boring as hell, I guess my concern is just, I look at Toronto's defense and I look at Tampa's defense. And
that's fair.
And I think Tampa Bay's defense, and especially the last few years in the postseason. Now maybe this year offense is up significantly across the board. Maybe that continues in the postseason. But I look at Andrei Vasilevsky, man, come playoff time in Tampa Bay, and you talked about the 2019 Lightning. When they lost, Hedman was a shadow. He only played 2 games. He was hurt. That's when he got walked by David Savard of all people because he couldn't turn, he couldn't skate, and. Man, I look at Hedman and I'm like, can Toronto, I think Toronto can score with most teams, but the problem is the Tampa Bay Lightning, it's hard to outscore the Lightning, right? Like Kucherov and Point, and Steven Stamkos had 100 points for the first time in his career.
If there's one team that can do it, though, it's the Leafs.
Yeah, well, or Florida.
I think, and Florida. But I'm saying in this first round, it's Florida or the Leafs, and they got one of them. Like the Leafs have a shot to at least keep pace with the Lightning in goals.
Yeah, fair, but do they have a shot to keep pace defensively? And that's where I think they fall short, unfortunately. I think Tampa Bay, I have Tampa in 6 games. I think it's a close series, but I just think the Tampa Bay, ultimately, I like their goaltending defense better.
I just think it'd be, if this team could finally slay the Dragon in the first round, to do it against the Lightning, I think would really mean a lot.
Oh, I don't discount that for sure, right? Like there's obviously, Toronto's, it's funny, they're the home team, but I haven't even looked at the line. Like if they're favored,
it's actually dead even.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not one where, like, if Toronto wins, I'm not going to be shocked, but I don't know. Maybe it's because there's a champ. I have a hard time always picking against a champion. Just when you think that they're not going to be good, and here they are. Like Tampa Bay looked to me like a team that at times in the regular season, Frank, was kind of going through the motions a little bit.
They definitely were. My question is, they've shown the ability to flip the switch. At some point, you're not going to be able to anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
And at some point, all the hockey you've played in the last couple of years is going to catch up to you. It's a fact. Is it against the Leafs? Is it later? Is it next year? Who knows?
It is my series to watch, though, in the East. It's the one I will be watching. It's
appointment viewing.
Yeah.
For the drama if they lose, and for the excitement if they win.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think it'll be the most watched series in the East. I don't think there's any question about that. Now let's move over to the Metro division, and of course the number 1 seed Carolina Hurricanes. The Boston Bruins are now officially, Frank, in the Metro division in theory as they cross over. And by the way,
not a terrible place to be.
No, not terrible. I still would like to say to the NHL, if it's 4-4, can we just have teams in their own division? Much rather have Boston, Florida, Carolina, Washington. But that's just me. I don't think 1 or 2 points should be that much of a difference maker. Nonetheless, here's my upset, Frank. I have the Boston Bruins upsetting the Carolina Hurricanes in 7. And because Freddie Anderson question marks in goal. That's my thing. Goaltending, man, like Antti Ranta, I can't trust him to stay healthy, unfortunately. And maybe Freddie Anderson's ready. And if he is ready, well, that obviously, you know what? I could look like a fool. But you go into the playoffs with some concerns in goal. That to me opens up a window. The Boston Bruins have been a very good team, a much better team since they switched up and put Pasternak on the line with Hall and Halla. And you have the Bergeron-Marchand duo together with DeBrusk. Their team's been much better. The Lindholm addition, I loved it at the deadline. I really think, and he didn't play a ton of games, right? Because he got banged up. So we haven't seen Boston with all of their blue line guys together. I like their team. There's something about Carolina. I don't know why. I feel they're ripe for an upset.
I have a hot take for you. This wouldn't be that much of an upset.
Yeah, well, that's fair too.
Betting wise, they're almost dead even. And more than that, the models and everything else that you look at have this being pretty close too. You remember that stat we talked about?
Yeah, you sat close, buddy. Oh, I've been looking at it.
That close percentage. These are the top 2 teams in the league over the last 6 weeks. So they've played pretty well by all, sort of measures in that sense. I have the Hurricanes in 7. I also think it's going to be close, but I do think Freddie Anderson will be back at some point. My sense is somewhere around game 3.
Okay.
I think it's Antti Ranta going in game 1, but they aren't afraid to go with Peter Kochetkov in game 1 if they need to. It's going to be really interesting. I just think the identity of the Canes, their depth is definitely better up front. They may not have the superstar, but they've been in a bunch of playoff battles of late, as have the Bruins. And I think their defense is better than the Bruins. And I don't even think it's close.
Yeah. Jacob Slavin, one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL. Right?
I think it's going to be interesting to see Hampus Lindholm at full health finally for the Bruins. And to get a preview of that, what are they calling it in Boston? Hammer and Chuck? Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy. That could be a glimpse into the Bruins' future. But
I like that.
I just think the Hurricanes are a deeper team. And if they can get their goalie healthy, then I think they prevail.
I look at the history of these two teams, and obviously it's very different when you go back to the Hartford Whalers days. But the Bruins and the Hurricanes have met 7 times since they've been in Carolina. So I like there's a little bit of history there, Frank.
This is
like
the third time in the last 4 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. So I think there's going to be, there's a little bit of automatic animosity built in, which I like. I think this is actually going to be a sneaky, angry series because of that, right? Like you've got a lot of the guys, like there hasn't been a ton of turnover amongst the core on either group here. So you've got a lot of guys who have played against one another in the postseason in the last few years. I like that. I think it adds a little bit more animosity to start. Obviously, Brad Marchand can stir up the pot with the best of them. Mm-hmm. And there's some series got to go 7. And you know what? I like this one. Just something about the Bruins lately. I don't know why. And Freddie Anderson, Frank, if he comes back, how healthy is he? Because if he's healthy, then you know what? If he was ready to start the series, I probably would have picked Carolina. But so that's how close it is. But that's why I'm leaning towards the Bruins. And you look at like David Pasternak, and their power play can be good. And Patrice Bergeron, he can stifle anyone if you want to go head to head, right? Like he can shut down a lot of lines, and that's a big advantage.
To be fair, though, how healthy are the Bruins? I mean, Lindholm has missed a bunch of games. A bunch of guys have been out. It seems like they're getting it together at the right time in terms of their health, but they've had some question marks along the way too. And not for nothing, but I'd imagine Jeremy Swayman is the guy in net.
Yes.
For game 1. So how does he react in his first playoff environment?
That's fair. Well, I look at Jack Campbell last year, first year in the playoffs. I know they lost the series, but people forget Campbell had a .934 save percentage in that 7-game series loss. So I think Swayman comes in. To me, he was obviously the best rookie goalie in the National Hockey League this year, and he seems to have a little bit of swagger for them that they like. But I wouldn't be stunned if Allmark gets in a game or two.
It actually says I'm just seeing here. I'm waiting to see what it ends up being. I'm seeing here, just looking at Twitter while we're doing this live, it says Allmark confirmed game 1 starter.
Oh, there you go. Well, maybe they're going with a little bit. Not that he has much, but he doesn't have much more experience at all come postseason.
No. So
that should be a fun series, man. I love 7 gamers. So I hope we both picked in 7. That's what we agreed on. We just disagreed on the winners. So I like it. Which leaves us now to one more series, the Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And honestly, of all 4 series, Frank, even though I picked Florida in 5, this is the series right now I'm most comfortable in. The Pittsburgh Penguins, of all the 16 playoff teams, the Pittsburgh Penguins and the LA Kings have the worst records against other playoff teams. The Penguins this season were 14, 19, and 6. They won 14 of 39 games against playoff teams. LA won 14 of 38 against playoff-bound teams. The 2 worst by far. And I look at Pittsburgh and the rain, like Shesterkin. I know they got Crosby and Malkin. They got all, Letang, and everybody's like the last ride. And I understand that from an emotional standpoint. I just think the Rangers are very good. And they haven't, like, there was a little dip there in March, but back in April again, they're the best defensive team in the league. I'm taking the Rangers in this series. And I think the Rangers really control this one kind of from start to finish. I'll pick them in 6, but I won't be surprised if it's shorter.
I have the Rangers in 5, and I agree with you. I, for the life of me, cannot understand why in some sports books, the New York Rangers are the underdog.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Like, my mind is blown, and I get that, they may be relying on some statistical models that help shape the line. I understand that these two teams have matched up pretty evenly on, paper in terms of some numbers. But I look at these lineups and I'm like, show me where it's close. Goal, forward, defense. Like, I realize the Penguins have experience and there may be some twinge of an emotional component to it, but the Penguins have been absolutely running on fumes these last few weeks. They have shown no sign to me that they can be a competitive playoff team. And on top of that, there's also a lot of recent history when it comes to the playoffs that the Penguins frankly don't have the goods. So it's not like, I'm talking the last couple of years, they've been out quickly for the most part. What are they seeing that I'm not? That's what I kept asking myself this weekend. What am I missing here?
Well, does the line though, because the line always changes because if there's a lot of betting on Pittsburgh, right? So then it'll switch. So maybe that's why.
I'm talking how they opened.
Okay.
In some place, it was mostly even, but in some places, the Penguins opened as the favorite.
Yeah, that's odd.
I don't understand it.
Yeah. So
you've got the best goalie in the world starting off the series against Casey DeSmith. I think Tristan Jarry is pushing and is trying to make his way back. But how healthy is he going to be? He's dealing with a fracture in his foot. I don't know. I don't see the Penguins having the depth to compete. I really don't.
No, I gotta wonder if they're just looking at the play. And by the way, Chris Letang has had a sneaky, really good season for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
He was like number 5, 6 in my Norris.
Yeah, like sneaky good
discussion.
He was he's been excellent. And so you look, you've got Adam Fox, you've got Letang, and then you've got Panarin and Kreider, and obviously Malkin and Crosby have the better resumes. There's no question about that. But New York this season, and here's my wild card in that series, Frank. Alexis Lafreniere. I don't know if you've seen his last few months of the season. He's starting to figure it out as a young player and big guy. I look at Lafreniere. He's my. Now I know when you score 19 goals, it's not going to be a shock that the guy is productive, but I think he's going to be a big time player for the Rangers this series.
I just think all you need is one of those young guys. That's the best part. Yeah. One of him or Kakko or someone else to step up and be the guy.
Yeah.
Just in a supporting role. You don't need a ton. And then how about, it seems like Andrew Kopp is going to be healthy for game 1. Panarin, I believe, is also healthy for game 1. And Kopp has fit like a glove, man. 18 points in 16 games. I know they got some bad luck when it came to Tyler Mott. And it seems like he's going to be out a while, but still that Kopp pickup has been awesome. And Frank Vetrano has been pretty good too. Yes. 8 goals in 22 games. Like, Chris Drury did some sneaky good work at the deadline.
No, the Rangers' depth is very good. Like, you've got a lot of experience on the Pittsburgh depth with Jeff Carter and Brian Boyle and stuff like that. And I know that there's, the Cup resumes on Pittsburgh is infinitely longer. But I think it's time for the Rangers. I think this is the start of a little bit of a run here over the next few years where the Rangers are going to be a top team. Whether that results in a Stanley Cup final appearance, we'll see. But,
I was going to say, let me give you this. I think the Rangers are going to the conference final this year.
I just want to point out something, Frank. For dailyfaceoff.com, we had to do brackets. I hate brackets because so much can change in a series. I like it, but I hate it because in the NHL, injuries can play such a key role. And there are some teams that I picked to go, like there was Boston and the Rangers, who I had. I agonized. I actually sent Matt by accident twice with the wrong name because I wasn't sure who I liked to win that series and get to the conference final. So trust me, because I picked Boston to upset, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Rangers then, defeated Boston.
As I like to say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I like it. So we agree on the Rangers and the Panthers, and then we disagree on the other two series. You have Toronto and Carolina. I have Boston and Tampa Bay. So
at some point, the Leafs are going to slay the dragon. They're going to get over their own demons.
Going with the odds, Frank.
They're too good. They're too good not to.
Okay. Well, hey, I'll say this. It'll be full marks for them if they knock off the two-time defending champion. No one can say they lucked their way into the second round if that happens, for sure. So
all you have to do is win the series in 6 or fewer.
Yeah, that's all you have to do.
That's
it's not a big deal. Just got to win the series, guys. This is great. Like easy peasy, lemon squeezy, as my son likes to say. So, now let's get to the Central Division. Of course, the only division that had 5 teams in the postseason. Dallas for today is now a Pacific Division team. But we'll start. The Nashville Predators had a 4-0 lead 7 minutes into their final game of the season in Arizona. They lose 5-4 and now have to play the Colorado Avalanche. Yikes! Frank, you mentioned no UC Saros. Big Save Dave is going to have to be multiple Big Save Dave, I think, for the
or else
the
it's
Preds.
going to be Connor Ingram pretty quickly.
Yeah,
there's not a very long leash on David Riddick to start the series.
Okay, that's fair. How much does the absence, like, does UC Saros' absence say 0% for you in this series for Nashville?
Yes, maybe 1%.
Yeah,
I'm not seeing it. I think they're so over. I mean, yes, they've had some great seasons from Matt Duchene and Mikael Granlund has been excellent. And so has Philip Forsberg. I just think they're so over reliant in their style of play on Roman Josi that if you can find a way to shut him down, it takes so much out of their game. And I know he does a lot of different things, but you can tell watching their game that they look for him so much that if you find a way to close him out or box him out, and make him a non-factor, I don't even think if they had Saros, they have a chance to win the series.
Well, it does illustrate how valuable that Roman Josi has been for that team. It's phenomenal what he's done. Offensively, just, all the minutes he plays for them. I would agree with you, Frank. The other thing is Nathan MacKinnon is one of the few players who's a big-time point producer in the regular season, but then
gets
goes
better,
just amps it up. Because it's hard. Like, if you're a 1.2 point per game player in the regular season, it's hard to be better in the postseason. But McKinnon's one of those rare guys who does it. And I think he's going to go scorched earth again in this series. I won't be surprised if the guy, we're sitting after 5 games in the series and Nathan MacKinnon has 8 or 9 points. It won't surprise me whatsoever. Rantanen, Kadri, Makar's healthy, Devin Taves now, who's missed like 16 regular season games. The one thing that Nashville has going for them is that they've played the top teams very well. They've had good success against Colorado this year. They're a big physical team. That they're going to continue that style, but the injury of UC Saros to me makes it much more difficult. I thought they might be able to upset in a few, but now I see him. I'll give him 1 game, but I'll say the Avs in 5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I got Avs in 5. I'm just not seeing a path for Nashville. That stat is amazing. That game 1 will be the first game the entire season long that the Avs have every player healthy.
Yeah.
And in their lineup.
Yeah. Crazy.
And it was funny. So I'm not going to spoil it totally, but I don't have the Avs getting out of the second round.
Okay. Well, that's awesome.
And so we'll talk our full bracket toward the end, but I was really torn. I'm in this playoff pool with a bunch of other media people, and I had we do a random lottery, and I got the number 1 overall pick, and I didn't really know what to do because I don't know how deep the Avs are going to go, but I took MacKinnon anyway for the reason that you mentioned. Just that he's the rare guy that somehow finds a way to transform his game and get to the next level when it's harder than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good on who you would take number 1 overall in playoff pools this year. I like that. We might have to get into that. Let's now go to what I believe is easily the most difficult series to pick in the West, no question in my mind. Not much separates the St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild. Both teams have been absolutely on fire heading into the stretch here. Minnesota ends up with home ice advantage. And ultimately, Frank, that to me was the deciding factor. I looked at so many numbers here. We might see all 4 goalies in this series, and not because a goalie plays poorly per se. I just think both teams like their goaltenders. And, Fleury, Talbot, you got Husso. Of course, he's got no playoff experience. You got Binnington, and so maybe St. Louis says, hey, he can turn back the clock a little bit for us. The Blues, they rely a lot on Colton Parayko. Justin Falk has had a sneaky good offensive season. He doesn't play a ton of hard minutes, but when he's on the ice, he's very effective in certain matchups. But man, Minnesota, the additions they made at the deadline, Bill Guerin, they are a tough team. They're physical. They're deep. Now, the only thing is I haven't seen an update on Foligno.
He's in.
He's in. Okay.
He's good to go.
He's in now.
He practiced on Sunday, so there was a mild surprise, and it seemed, Dean Evison said if he's good to go, he's in. So if you're practicing Sunday, you're probably in.
Because he just brings a lot of energy to that team.
Line is awesome.
Oh man, there's so many players on both those teams that I really like. I'm gonna
Greenway, Eriksson, Ek, Foligno. Oh, that's a monster line.
And you throw in Nick Delorier, who's been a really good addition to that team.
Jacob Middleton on the back end is good.
Big physical. I love that. I think this is going to be the old Chuck Norris division, Frank. It was just back in the black and blue division. Remember the Norris division when you had St. Louis, Chicago, and Toronto? God, they just used to beat the hell out of each other. It was awesome. I think this is going to be a physical, hard series, but I'm taking the Wild in 7.
I am also taking the Minnesota Wild, and I have them in 7, and I have the Minnesota Wild going on to win the Stanley Cup.
Oh, bold.
Bold. It is and it isn't. Like, they were the 5th best team in the league this year.
Yes.
They've been the 2nd hottest team since the trade deadline. And I just think they're big, heavy up front. They're maybe missing a little bit of that on their back end, but they're pretty mobile. And I think their goalie situation, you can't go wrong with either guy in net, Cam Talbot or Marc-Andre Fleury. I think they've got a little bit of swagger to them. And when they play with their identity, I think they're a really tough out. And I think that they beat the Blues in round 1 and obviously give the Avs all they can handle and more in round 2.
Yeah, you know what?
In saying that, this is why it's a bold pick, is that they may not win the first round series.
Yeah, it's very possible. You're right. Like they're not a heavy favorite by any stretch of the imagination.
It's a disastrous bracket. That's the potential, at least, that it's just you can just throw it out after the first 5 or 6 games.
Well, I'll say this about the Wild, because of their cap penalties and dead cap space the next few years, I really hope for their fans' sake they have a deep run, because they're going to be playing with a big handicap the next few years when you got $14 and $12 million in dead cap space. Like, that's really hard to overcome. You're going to have some of the best bargain deals in the league to compete with top end teams. And so, you know what? I think Bill Guerin kind of recognized that a little bit, and that's why he loaded up at the deadline. I like the Wild team, Frank, and they got 2 really good goaltenders. Maybe we see, a Pittsburgh version of the Wild this year, where you got Fleury and Talbot like you had Fleury and Murray in 16 and 17. So
any team that wins 22 out of their last 25 games, heading down the stretch, like, you're doing something right.
And Minnesota is very good against playoff teams, Frank. Like, to me, I look at the team's records. Like, it's funny. All these teams who are in the playoffs have very good records against the non-playoff teams, right? Like, some of them dominant. Right? Like the LA Kings, to me, are the biggest. The reason the LA Kings are in the playoffs, they won 30 of 44 games against non-playoff teams. They went 37-7 against
that was the knock against the Pacific.
But again,
but
it's not just Pacific teams, though, because it's LA was dominant against the non-playoff teams across the league, right? But you look at Dallas. Dallas was 26-13-4 against non-playoff teams. LA was 30.
Have 5 non-playoff teams in your own division.
Yeah,
it's the only division in the league that only has 3 teams in.
Yeah, but still, count the other. So there's still how many non-playoff teams in the other divisions? 16. 12.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you have a built-in advantage in your schedule in that you play your division teams more than you play your conference teams and the non-conference teams, which means if you beat in that division the non-playoff teams, you're going to get in.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at, you look at St. Louis, Minnesota, but LA, the reason I don't like the Kings in the playoffs, they haven't been good against any playoff teams around the league. They've only won 14 of 38 games against playoff teams. And that's why I think I see the easiest series is we won't do it next, we'll do it last. But let's go to Calgary and Dallas, which I think we can all agree, Frank, the most disappointing thing about the Arizona beating Nashville was it robbed us of a Nashville-Calgary playoff series, because I don't know if you saw their final regular season meeting. It was electric, physical goals, and obviously Saros got injured. But if Saros was healthy,
that's the thing. Once Saros went out, it took the wind out of the sails for me. They played each other twice in the final 2 weeks, and both games were epic.
Yeah.
And it would have been an awesome playoff series that I think the Preds had a real chance to win.
Yeah. But I still think it would have, the physicality still was going to be there, even if Saros wasn't in goal. Right. And now, I think Calgary's going to walk all over Dallas.
I think Dallas is mentally spent. I think they have nothing left. That collapse that they had against the Coyotes, and I know the Preds experienced the same thing one night later. No bueno. No bueno. I don't see it for the Stars. They've got one line. I don't know that you can even make the argument that they're a two-line team. I like their back end, and I like Jake Ottinger, but I don't know that any one of those things are enough to overcome a pretty well-rounded Calgary team.
No, I'm taking the Flames in 5.
I got the Flames in 5 as well.
Yeah.
I could see that being a sweep.
There's not my, and no offense, Dallas fans, there's not a matchup where I look and say, okay, here's a big advantage for Dallas. I don't see it, right? The only, them and the Flames did win the same amount of games against playoff teams. They each won 20. The difference was the Flames lost 7 in overtime / shootouts, right? So they got the extra points out of it. But Dallas, I really like Jason Robertson, man. The only way Dallas can win
Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski. It's a great line. It's their only line. That's the problem.
But they're going to try. I wonder, will they go head to head against the Flames top line or not? But I think the only way Dallas can succeed is if they find a way to take Johnny Gaudreau out of the series. Right?
Yeah.
That's.
I guess. I just think the Flames have a chance, even if Johnny Gaudreau is a non-factor. I just think they're that deep. They're going to get the contributions from the Toffoli group. And, I'd imagine at some point, Calle Yaremchuk is going to poke his head through with the Flames and get it together. And, their back end has been productive. How many people know that Rasmus Andersson had a 50-point season on the blue line? Shillington was really good. They've got stout defense in Zadorov and Goodbranson. Markstrom has been ridiculous. I think even if Johnny Gaudreau doesn't score, the Flames win that series.
Okay. Now let's get to the LA Kings and the Oilers. Who do you like?
I like the Oilers in 6. There was some chatter or conversation over the last few days saying that the Kings may be one team that could pull off an upset in round 1. I personally don't see it, not without Drew Doughty. It'll be really interesting to watch the matchup game. Who gets the bulk of the McDavid assignment? Is it Kopitar or is it Danault? We talked all season long about how Danault would free up Kopitar. How do you view it? Do you put the Selke winner in Kopitar on McDavid's line and then say, okay, Danault, it's up to you to help produce offense? Or do you do it the other way around? Put Danault on him and then say, Kopitar, go out and try and score as much as you can.
Well, Kopitar is going to go up against Draisaitl. So, that's the advantage Edmonton has, is they've got the best 1-2 center punch in the NHL. And right now, you have Evander Kane and Connor McDavid who are lighting everything up. The Edmonton Oilers, since Jay Woodcroft took over, Frank, the only team with a better record than the Oilers is the Florida Panthers. The Oilers and the Flames are tied with 7. They're 20. They've each played 38 games. Edmonton's won 26. Calgary's won 25. Calgary has 2 OT losses. Edmonton has 3. They have the same amount of points. They have the same points percentage. It's only the Florida Panthers that are better than them. You look at the Oilers. The big thing where the Oilers have struggled for years was 5-on-5 goals against. And Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson have come in. The players have bought in. The Oilers goals against, they're top 5 in goals for and top 5 in goals against since Woodcroft took over. Honestly, you mentioned Drew Doughty, and that's the key. The Oilers and Kings have met 3 times in the last few months with Woodcroft. Edmonton's 3-0 in those games. They've scored 14 goals in 3 games. I don't see how the LA Kings can shut down the Edmonton Oilers. And the other thing is the Edmonton Oilers come in, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Darnell Nurse, who's going to be healthy. He'll play in game 1. They're still pissed off from what happened last year in Winnipeg, where I thought the Oilers beat themselves as much as Winnipeg beat them. If you go back and look at how many untimely, unforced errors the Oilers made that led directly to goals, they lost 3 games in overtime, 2 of them on bad giveaways. I think they dominate this series against LA, and I think LA's defense gets really exposed, and the Oilers win in 5.
See, the only thing that gives me pause is exactly what you just said about the Oilers beating themselves. Like, don't you have to allow for that possibility to happen again?
Nah, they haven't done it in 3 months. Like, they look like they've learned from it, right? Like
3 months though, that's not like 3 years.
That's all you can
gauge.
I can only
I'm not
gauge.
Saying that I'm with you. I think the Oilers win the series. I think it's fair to have questions about what Oiler team we see.
Yeah, different coach, right? And keep in mind, Kane, Fogle, Hyman, their 3 left wingers weren't on the team last year in the playoffs. Duncan Keith wasn't on the team. Cody Ceci wasn't on the team. Brett Kulak, like those are 6 of, your top probably 12 guys in ice time. That's a significant difference to your team, right? Yeah. There's tons of playoffs experience with Keith. Brett Kulak went to the Stanley Cup final last year. I just think Edmonton's a very different team. And LA's of all the first round, I think Pittsburgh and LA were the 2 teams that if I was an opposing playoff team, I'd want to meet in the first round. And I think the Rangers and Edmonton probably got the 2 easiest ones. Dallas and Calgary's probably a close second/third as far as easy first round matchups. I just think this is a favorable matchup for Edmonton. And if Drew Doughty's in, Frank, that makes a big difference because he adds so much fire to that LA Kings team that it might alter things, but I don't see it. I think Edmonton really controls this series. And all the numbers that I've seen under Woodcroft, their penalty kill, their power play, their 5-on-5 play, the Oilers just, they don't beat themselves anymore. At least they haven't under Woodcroft. And there's a different aura around that team. Woodcroft has come in. He seems to communicate better. There's so many players that just like how he's found ways, even though the minutes haven't changed. Like his depth guys don't play any more minutes than the depth guys under Dave Tippett, but they all seem to be liking it more. It's a weird thing. I can't understand why, because the minutes played aren't any different, but he's convinced the guys that they're more valuable to the team.
So we got a couple minutes left in the pod. Let's run through our brackets. So we'll go backwards now. We'll start with the Battle of Alberta then, since we both have the Oilers and Flames advancing.
Yeah. See, I picked Calgary in 7 in my bracket, and I was already questioned the minute I could easily see that going either way. And then I have Colorado and Minnesota. So I have Calgary and Colorado in the West Conference Final.
Okay. I have the Flames in 6, and I have the Wild knocking off the Abs in 7.
Nice. I had Abs in 6, Flames in 7.
Okay, so let's move to the East. We were in consensus that the Rangers will face off against you have the Bruins, I have the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Who you got?
I have the Florida I have Florida beats Tampa in 6, and the Rangers beat Boston in 6. Or no, sorry, Boston beats the Rangers, and then I have Florida over Boston in the final.
Okay. I have the Panthers beating the Leafs in 7, and the Rangers beating the Hurricanes in 6. So that sets up a conference final for me of Rangers, Panthers, and I have the Panthers advancing to the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1996 in 5 games. What do you have in your East final?
I have the Panthers taking on the Boston Bruins, and the Rangers. No, the Bruins. God, the Bruins. See, I got my picks mixed up.
Make up your mind.
I'm making up 2 emails here. I'm looking at my emails to Matt Larkin when I had to send in my bracket. And I had the Panthers winning in 6, and then I have the Panthers beating Colorado in 7 games in the Stanley Cup final.
Okay, so I've got the Panthers and Wild going head-to-head in the final. I've got
the Wild winning.
The Wild in 6. And I've got we're going to call this cup final the Mike Russo Bowl.
I was just going to say.
Both teams that he covered, Minnesota and Florida, his worlds colliding.
2 expansion teams from the last 30 years. Interesting. Yeah. Hey, anything's happened, man. We've seen it every year. No one thought the Montreal Canadiens were getting to the Stanley Cup final. I never mock anyone's bracket because honestly, no one knows. That's why it's fun.
That's the best part. And I feel like this year more than ever, I see more chalk picks. And I'm like, why is that? We know every year there's something wacky that no one sees coming. Why do you not have any upsets in your bracket?
I don't have a ton. I have Boston.
I don't mean you. I just mean the general public. I've seen all these brackets coming out. I'm like, we know every year there's something absolutely kooky. Why not? Why not go off the board?
I'll ask you one question. Dallas, Nashville, LA, Pittsburgh. Which team, if you had to pick one, can upset?
If I had to pick one, it would be LA.
Okay. All right.
I just have a weird feeling about that. I think the Oilers win, but I'm wondering if it's going to be a lot closer than we imagine.
Okay. I think Edmonton really controls that series. But I will admit very openly that I really want a Battle of Alberta. There hasn't been one in 31 years, Frank.
I'm saving my bullets.
Yeah, you watched the.
I'm not going anywhere in the first round because I'm saying we're gonna have a Battle of Alberta in the second round, and I want to be at all 7 games.
Yeah, well, I will be. So I'm looking forward to it. I love rivalry games. That's why I would have loved to see Toronto Boston again. If you would have had Tampa, Florida, and Toronto Boston in the first round, that'd have been unreal. Would have loved it.
None of these first round matchups, really from a rivalry perspective, are there's going to be good series, but none of them really put it over the top where I was like, you know what? we got to be there. We got to cover that.
Boston and Carolina in their recent history might be that one. Just based on that.
The fun of the first round, I can't wait, is just parking your ass on the couch and flipping back and forth.
I love it. So,
all night long for 2 weeks.
Hydrate, folks. Have a lot of water. Get some chips. Frank, have you had the spicy ketchup chips yet? They just came out. They're so good. Not. Miss Vicky's. Oh, unbelievable. Game changer, Frank. Right. Oh, and by the way, do you have an air fryer?
I do.
We bought an air fryer last week. I did steak on the air fryer.
Yep.
It's one of the greatest steaks I've ever had.
That's actually how I cook my steaks.
Yeah. And we did chicken. I've never, usually I would buy box chicken wings and whatever. We bought just fresh chicken wing, spiced them all up ourselves, put them in last night. Unbelievable. And they're not deep fried, so they're healthier for you. I'm not a big kitchen gadget guy, but I'm telling you, the air fryer is an absolute game changer.
I have one of those Ninjas, and that's actually how I cook my steak. I don't own a grill. I cook my steaks on that.
Chicken? Have you done chicken on it?
I have. Yeah, I've done everything.
Okay.
Everything's good.
I just got it, man. I'm just like,
the best part is you just throw it on there. Yeah. Not to use the old set it and forget it, but you close the lid, you use the little meat stick, the temperature thing.
Yes.
It literally tells you when it's done.
I know. Yeah. It's idiot proof.
All you do is take it off. Yeah.
I'm like, the chefs must hate it because a moron like me can make a good steak now. Frankie, have yourself an awesome week. We'll talk to you on Friday, where I'm sure there'll be a few series that already are going the way we didn't think, which will make it fun.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Saravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode. Delivered by DoorDash.